This morning I want to talk about one component of the fruit of the Spirit, which is joy. It means delight, happiness, pleasure, enjoyment, bliss, ecstasy, elation, joyfulness, thrill. We who know ourselves to be beloved children of God are to delight, to take pleasure in, to appreciate, relish, enjoy, savor, bask in this wondrous world and the mind-boggling gifts it holds. God created all things good. Our job is to learn to cultivate abilities to appreciate the goodness of God's handiwork. Now, I'm one who, if I am honest, I have to admit I sometimes have trouble feeling and expressing joy. I have my moments. It seems like with all the responsibilities I have, I've basically evolved into this serious sort over time, and I spend far too much time worrying and fretting and stewing about things. But faith and friends have taught me what so many Christians need to know. We don't have to choose between being a Christian on the one hand or being a person who enjoys life on the other. I think Jesus would be the first to tell us that it's actually a both and. In fact, I think he would admonish us that if we know God, then we should enjoy fullness of life, should we not? Now, full lives, as we all know, include ups and downs, and Collins alluded to that already this morning. I'm not saying that life will always be a bed of roses because you're a Christian. We know that's simply not true, do we not? Some of you are wrestling with problems and with pain that I can't even begin to fathom. But the thing that helps us know joy is the assurance that God holds us through it all. We are there in the palm of God's hands. We are wrapped in God's loving arms. And because of our faith in Jesus the Christ, nothing can separate us from the love and grace and mercy of God. Joy flows from our relationship with God. It's about our attitudes. It's about our orientation towards life. It's not so much a feeling as it is a decision, a way of being in and relating to this world in which we live. As Paul told the Philippians in chapter 4, our attitude, our way of relating should always be one of joy. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I'll say, rejoice. Perhaps you're familiar with the movie Chocolat. I actually used a clip from this movie in a sermon several years back, but it's a wonderful movie, and it's one that I think captures that essence of joy better than any I can think of. It's about a town where someone seems to have removed from their Bibles the words Kevin read earlier, against such things there is no law. It's a town with too little joy and too many life-robbing rules. The story takes place in a small, quaint French village that holds fast to its traditions, thanks largely to an overzealous mayor whose brand of Christianity is repressive, austere, and distrustful of strangers. The film opens on Ash Wednesday as the season of Lent is just beginning. And clearly the inhabitants of this sedate little village have been beaten down. They've been taught that God will be very displeased somehow if they enjoy life too much. But a mysterious woman and her young daughter come to town to open a chocolate shop. I would be happy if it were a coffee shop. But come to town to open a chocolate shop. And this, of course, upsets the mayor very much. He's greatly disturbed, as he has always promoted this strict observance of the Lenten fasting in his village. And surely he thinks this will be a terrible temptation to the devout among them. The count, the mayor, a rigid and empty man whose wife has left him, has been increasing his grip on the town for decades through his dark devotion to the rules of propriety and his understanding of religion. But Vienne, this woman who comes to town, makes exquisite chocolates which tempt the villagers. the villagers who cautiously begin making their way to her shop, and by doing so, they find that their lives are changed. For in addition to her gift for making chocolate, Vienne, this outsider, exhibits an exuberant delight in life and has a knack for reaching out and welcoming the other folks, especially the misfits in this tightly knit village. Vienne has a way of endearing herself to a small segment of the community by guessing their favorite chocolates and treating them like royalty. Of course, her strength is not in her recipes, but rather in her ability to give unconditional love and acceptance to others in spite of their flaws and their foibles. Chocolat is a story of transformation. It's about finding true joy that God intends for all of us. I want to show you a small piece of the movie. In this clip, Lent has been lived out, and the Count can no longer resist the temptation of the chocolate shop. So what does he do? He breaks in at night. He gorges himself on the delicious, delectable treats, and is found Easter morning by the young priest asleep in the display window amid the candy and the sweets. He feels himself ashamed that he is proven to be just as human as all the rest, and so he seems to think he is somehow less Christian. You know, sometimes Hollywood gets it better than the church can, do they not? As Pierre Henry so eloquently stated in his Easter Sunday sermon, Christian joy is not so much about what we don't do, but about what we do. It's not so much about what we deny ourselves, but what we affirm. And as he says, I want to talk about Christ's humanity. I mean, how he lived his life on earth, his kindness, his tolerance. We can't go around measuring our goodness by what we don't do, by what we deny ourselves, what we resist, and who we exclude. I think we've got to measure our goodness by what we embrace, he said, what we create, and who we include. What we embrace, what we create, who we include. As in the movie, a stranger once came and taught people what it is to know joy. The Christian story is a story of transformation, a story about a lightening of the Spirit. The gospel is about freedom from the old and being strangely released. Joy can be ours when we're willing to believe that through the baby born in Bethlehem, God entered into our human life and history in a new and special way. Joy can be ours when we are willing to believe that in and through Jesus, through his life, death, and resurrection, God has called us into relationship, called us beloved children of God. Joy can be ours when we're willing to believe that our lives are securely in God's keeping. Joy can be ours when we're willing to believe that there is no longer any need for us to always be asserting ourselves against our neighbors, but that we can, in fact, give ourselves away just as Jesus did. Why? Because that's God's way. And joy can be ours when we're willing to look around and see the beauty in God's creation, to hear the delight of a child giggling while chasing a butterfly, to see the beauty of a Texas sunset, to taste the indescribable flavor of a piece of really good chocolate. There's joy to be found. And then, of course, there's joy to be given. As a people of love, let us serve God with joy. Thanks be to God. Amen.